Hey everybody, it's the Golden Sound Twice. So before I have to take off my makeups and call family to be like, this is how the job interview went, I should do one more review. And what, pray tell, will I do it on? Wow! Well, I guess it's appropriate that I burp because I decided to do it on Biker Mice from Mars. It's been a while. Wow, this is moving and that needs to stop. It's working. Yes. All right. So I've said so many times, yes, I'm going to do another review. And then I don't do it because I get distracted by so many other shows. So this review will be on different characters from Biker Mice from Mars. And I've decided to, I've decided, and also what's requested of me, to talk about Vinnie first from Biker Mice from Mars. So, good old Vincent. Let's talk about him. I do enjoy Vincent a lot. There are some character flaws of his that I find really frustrating, in that he has a lot of macho tendencies and kind of, I don't necessarily want to say he's a misogynist, because it's I'm very conflicted on that, because I think what it is, he puts on this very tough guy act, and he acts like he has the biggest ego in the world. He's always self-complimenting himself, always saying how wonderful he is. And, we realize that, of course, this show was written for a young male audience, so he's always going to be like, oh, yeah, sweetheart, I'm going to save everybody, and you just sit back and fix my bike when I need you to. And, of course, that was a terrible Vinnie impersonation, but, that type of character usually has me go, that's so frustrating. But here's the interesting thing. I think that there is so much depth and layers that are to this character that aren't necessarily hit upon, because A, it was a show from the 90s, B, it was written for a younger male audience, so 5 to 10-year-olds, and so they didn't go into a lot of the psyche of characters throughout the show and try to make it more friendly fun, but you can tell that there's a lot of deeper stuff going on. For example, all of these characters, all the mice, have severe PTSD, and it makes sense because they came from a world where everybody they knew and loved and cared for was basically murdered in front of them. And the ones that had survived are severely scarred in both psychological and physical ways. And so, Vinnie himself lost half his face during an explosion, and he was captured, and he was going to be tortured. So, and then he watched the love of his life being used as a hostage and then kidnapped and taken away. And he couldn't save her. So he's got a lot mentally going on. Also, when we look at the back, I'm cold. When we look at, well, there goes that. When we look at the the back flashes that they have of his life, you also see he's put down a lot by his superior officer. And yes, he acts like a cocky little shit throughout those times, and he always does. But I really think that's a way to kind of boost his morale. We don't know the timeline of the war. We don't know, was it already raging on when he was born? Did it happen after he was born? We know that he's 21. So in those 21 years, was that entire time imbued and embedded in war? Or was there some freedom before that? Or what? I will not deny, he has a very huge ego, absolutely. And yes, he is very skilled. He's very talented. He was drawn very aesthetically pleasing. But I wonder sometimes how much of that is like that's how he actually is, and how much of that is him trying to bolster himself, trying to fill some sort of empty crevice there, because we see that when he's being put down, it really hurts him. And I think that this is a character that has a lot of insecurities, especially after the explosion, and he kind of touches on that just a little bit, where having half of his face, like missing half of his face scarred, it really emotionally messes with him. And I think throughout the show, the more he's trying to bolster himself up, the more he's trying to give himself confidence, the more egotistical he becomes. But I think he really is a character that has a lot of, he just feels very inadequate, and I think that he has a lot of self-esteem issues, and tries to hide that with a tough bravado and a macho type personality. And then going on to how he treats women, he actually, we love how flirty he is with Charlie, but there's definitely times where I just want to take him and smack him and be like, no, let her go out and do things because she has shown that she can. But if we take it back and pretend that it wasn't made for a younger male audience, and pretend that it was in the show from the 90s, and if we look again at the psyche of the characters, so he had a crush, he had feelings for a mouse named Charlie on his planet. Or, not Charlie, Harley! He had feelings for Harley, and she was reciprocating them, and she vanished. She was taken as a hostage, and he never found her. And it bothered him immensely to lose somebody that he cared about. And I've noticed that when it comes to other female characters, he, definitely he'll try to flirt around a little bit, but ultimately he doesn't try to get too touchy with them. He doesn't try to get too up in their space. He's definitely like a, yes, look at me and my muscles type of a character. But at the same time, he won't put, if he sees a lady character that is kicking butt, he doesn't put her down for it. He's like, oh yeah, she's a tough individual. Too bad we have to fight her. Like, wouldn't it be great if she was on our side and she was attracted to me? Ha ha ha. But I think he has a respect for strong individual women. But for Charlie, because he has romantic feelings towards her, I think he is 1,000% more protective of her than he ever would have been. Like, when we saw the flashbacks with Harley, he didn't really try to protect her too much. Like, he had confidence in her abilities and skills as a fighter, and while she wasn't a fighter like he was, she was still a fighter in her own right and was a very strong and capable person. And he recognizes that in Charlie, but he's not going to take any chances. He refuses to take chances, and actually that's how all of them are. Like, they'll let anybody else be like, yeah, she's got this. With Charlie, they're like, nope, protect the small, protect her, can't let anything happen to her. And I've noticed that Vinnie feels that way the most. And again, it's because he has romantic inclinations towards her. And it's actually really sad, because sometimes that can be so stifling, because Charlie is a character and an individual who has so much to offer, but because of the past that the guys are from, where Vinny's from, he's scared to let her be her strong individual self because of all those what ifs, and we know he's not a character that will ever verbally say it. But we know that's what he's thinking, especially when he's like, let the macho mice take care of it, and you're sitting there going, really? But I think deep down it comes from a place of absolute terror that he'll lose her. So ultimately, while his egomaniac tendencies can be sometimes frustrating, he's also a very endearing and lovable character. And sometimes he can be a little bit too sarcastic, have a little bit too much of a bite to his remarks, but ultimately he's a really caring individual, and he cares for, the inhabitants of Earth. He doesn't want them to end up with what happened to his people. He loves his team. To him, they are brothers. They're closer than family. He loves Charlie. He adores Charlie. Like, there are so many, like, there are so many moments, and I can't even, like, think of all of them right now, where he just is so tender and loving towards her. And I just scream about it a lot. But he turns around and kind of will, like, mess it up by being, like, a flirty little jock, and you're just like, stop that! Just stop! Give her flowers already! Bah! But, yeah, no, I think he's a very complicated character. I think that he definitely needs to have some of that, like, he needs to have that machoistic personality kind of worked out of him in a way where it's like, hey, give Charlie, you know, the respect that she deserves. Like, and he does respect her, but, you know, because he's a guy, he won't admit it. Meh. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on Vinnie. Stay tuned for next time when I do another character. I haven't decided who yet. So, anywho, Biker Mice from Mars.